The syndicate deployed this capital with a singular objective. This new strategy paired the 60,000 crore injection with planned violence, designed to force the Indian state to fight on two fronts, economic and physical, simultaneously. Dawood set a strict timeline to beat that political clock. The massive currency drop had to be completed by November 9, 2016. Operating within the Pakistani Lyari gang, he had earned the trust of the key operators facilitating the drop. The syndicate brought Sharma to a hidden facility. Inside, the counterfeit notes were already printed, bundled, and sitting in massive sacks awaiting dispatch. Knowing that executing this unprecedented plan would instantly trigger massive chaos, the DGP hesitated. Ateek controlled deep ground intelligence across multiple districts. Their orders were to metapla targets every move through the dense city streets without ever making physical contact. Every bundle of counterfeit paper was concealed under false bottoms and heavy goods, prepped to flood the Indian economy, while Indian operatives were trying to hide their surveillance footprint. Doval insisted the plan had to be executed that very night. The policy designed to neutralize this terror network bypassed kinetic military strikes entirely. And then, the STF made their move. In a rapid, coordinated action, the plainclothes officers closed in on him. All the billions of meticulously forged notes sitting in the trucks outside instantly turned into worthless Rathlimber. For years, a counterfeit syndicate had been quietly operating out of a madrasa in Islamabad. Led by figures like Dawood Ibrahim, they successfully smuggled 11,000 crore rupees in fake currency. They managed this massive influx without a single note being intercepted by authorities. The syndicate deployed this capital with a singular objective. They wanted to manipulate the upcoming 2014 Indian elections and prevent a specific political outcome. In May 2014, the new government was sworn in. Sitting in their Islamabad basement, the syndicate realized their massive investment had yielded zero political return. This chart shows their exact response. They did not retreat. Instead, they scaled up, setting a new target to inject a staggering 60,000 crore rupees of fake currency into the Indian economy. Their blueprint relied heavily on geography and local muscle. The cash would cross the porous Nepal border, funnel directly into Uttar Pradesh, and use an established local gangsters network to scatter the counterfeit money nationwide. This new strategy paired the 60,000 crore injection with planned violence, designed to force the Indian state to fight on two fronts, economic and physical, simultaneously. By late 2016, the border environment was highly aggressive. Following the Uri surgical strikes, India had shifted into an uncompromising military posture. Inside the syndicate, Major Iqbal identified a critical vulnerability. If the upcoming 2017 state elections in Uttar Pradesh led to a change in leadership, their entire local smuggling and distribution network would be dismantled by the state. Dawood set a strict timeline to beat that political clock. The massive currency drop had to be completed by November 9, 2016. Raw intelligence regarding this 60,000 crore ultimatum reached National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Doval immediately issued an order to his embedded operatives. He needed to know one specific detail. Was the massive volume of currency already printed or still in production? The countdown to November 9th meant the window to protect market stability was closing. Every hour that passed brought the counterfeit currency closer to its distribution network in Uttar Pradesh. The syndicate relied heavily on the geography of the India-Nepal border, using busy crossings to quietly move massive assets hidden in daily commercial traffic. Major Shobit Sharma had spent years building a deep cover identity. Operating within the Pakistani Lyari gang, he had earned the trust of the key operators facilitating the drop. Sharma met with the syndicate leaders and delivered a calculated lie. He told them the Nepal route was compromised by Indian agencies, offering instead to provide a new, safer channel. To prove they had the capital ready for his new route, the syndicate brought Sharma to a hidden facility. Inside, the counterfeit notes were already printed, bundled, and sitting in massive sacks awaiting dispatch. Sharma successfully maintained his cover and transmitted this absolute confirmation back to New Delhi, just days before the November deadline. Sharma's intelligence shifted the crisis from a theoretical security risk to an unavoidable physical collision. On the morning of November 7, 2016, exactly 48 hours before the massive drop, a high-stakes meeting took place inside the Prime Minister's office in Delhi. Doval presented the finalized intelligence of the impending influx. He then formally laid his counterplan on the table, Operation Greenleaf. PM Modi hesitated. He weighed the domestic consequences, knowing that executing this unprecedented plan would instantly trigger massive chaos and cause severe financial hardship for everyday citizens. Doval held his ground. He argued that allowing this counterfeit cash to enter the economy would provide the required financial spine to fund widespread domestic terrorism for years. Doval laid out the brutal math. Intercepting that volume of cash at the border was a logistical impossibility. The only viable defense was to instantly shatter the domestic financial network designed to receive it. The choice had narrowed down to two risks: accepting the immediate shock of halting the economy, or allowing the 60,000 crore to become the permanent engine for the country. Late into the night, an industrial factory in Islamabad hummed with activity. Dozens of men were moving frantically, packing millions of meticulously printed counterfeit Indian currency notes into heavy wooden crates. This operation was operating under severe pressure. The syndicate's leadership, specifically Dawood Ibrahim, had issued a direct ultimatum to his key operative, Kanani. He had already lost the syndicate 11,000 crores in a previous failure, and falling short on this new batch was not an option. To execute the drop, Major Iqbal laid out a strict timeline. The fully loaded trucks had to reach the Nepal border by the evening of November 8th and push across into Indian territory exactly at 4 a.m. the next morning. Moving this massive volume of illicit cash requires a flawless supply chain. If the receiving end in India wasn't perfectly synchronized to take custody of those trucks, the entire shipment would be exposed to border security. That same morning in India, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval called an urgent, unstructured meeting with the Director General of Police in Uttar Pradesh. His directive was straightforward: arrest the syndicate's local point man, Atiq. The DGP hesitated. Atiq controlled deep ground intelligence across multiple districts. A standard police raid ran a very high risk of triggering mass communal riots to cover his escape. Doval made it clear this was a matter of national security, with zero margin for error. He gave the police 48 hours to execute a completely silent capture. If word of the arrest leaked back to Islamabad, the syndicate would bury the counterfeit cash and disappear underground. The Special Task Force immediately deployed plainclothes operatives. Their orders were to map the target's every move through the dense city streets without ever making physical contact. To neutralize a cross-border financial threat, intelligence forces first had to blind the syndicate's eyes on the ground. Back in Pakistan, the loading operations continued deep into the night. Millions in fake notes were packed so effectively that routine border checks would only see ordinary commercial cargo. Every bundle of counterfeit paper was concealed under false bottoms and heavy goods, prepped to flood the Indian economy. But Indian intelligence had a critical advantage. An operative, Major Shobit Sharma, was embedded directly within the factory floor, silently recording the syndicate's logistics and feeding that data straight back to Delhi. Meanwhile, in Uttar Pradesh, the STF held a closed-door briefing. The mandate was absolute operational secrecy. The protocol was strictly surveillance. The teams were to track the target's patterns, wait for the perfect moment, and do absolutely nothing more until the order was given. Both sides were now operating under extreme paranoia. The syndicate was trying to hide a massive financial payload, while Indian operatives were trying to hide their surveillance footprint. On the morning of the border crossing deadline, the focus shifted to a highly classified room in Delhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi convened a rare gathering alongside NSA Doval, the finance minister, and the governor of the Reserve Bank of India. Doval insisted the plan had to be executed that very night. The decision they were finalizing required total synchronization between the national security apparatus and the central banking system. It was a massive logistical undertaking. The policy designed to neutralize this terror network bypassed kinetic military strikes entirely. Instead, Delhi prepared to deploy an economic kill switch. By the evening of November 8th, the timelines collided. The trucks in Islamabad sat fully loaded, waiting for a final green light. Across the border in the Terai region, Atiq's operatives waited quietly in the dark, ready to receive the payload. Then, the STF made their move. In a rapid, coordinated action, the plainclothes officers closed in on him. Atiq was captured and secured without triggering a single public alarm or local riot. At that exact moment, the syndicate leadership in Islamabad was completely unaware that their entire ground network had just been severed. The clock hit exactly 8:15 p.m. Inside the Islamabad command center, Dawood and Kanani were checking the time, when an operative burst into the room in a panic, pointing at the television. PM Modi was broadcasting live to the nation. He was announcing the immediate unilateral invalidation of all existing 500 and 1,000 rupee notes. The room fell entirely silent. In a matter of seconds, all the billions of meticulously forged notes sitting in the trucks outside instantly turned into worth a sweathlimper. This single policy wiped out the targeted financial assets waiting across the border, effectively crippling the operation without firing a single shot. Realizing the total systemic failure of his mission and the severe consequences awaiting him, Kanani walked out to the roof of the compound and took his own life. While the public faced massive, chaotic economic fallout as they rushed to banks in the following days, the intelligence sector had quietly executed a massive internal defense operation. History's most effective preemptive strikes are sometimes executed by destroying an enemy's wallet rather than